Hello class. This video is for the students who were absent at the social studies field trip on Tuesday. But you can also watch this if you need a review on how to formulate your outline. So I'm going to upload this to Schoology as soon as it's done, and you'll have access to it as often as you'd like. So what we're going to be talking about today is how to create your outline based on your thesis statement. Now, hopefully at this point you have a pretty good thesis statement. Even if it's not perfect, that's okay. You just want to work with it so that you can polish it up as you go. But again, this is a work in progress. Hopefully, if you have your thesis statement, your idea is as good as it can be, and you can move forward in that direction even if it's not entirely polished. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about today is how to create an outline for a paper that has a variety of different kinds or different numbers of paragraphs. Okay, in the past, Mrs. Valentic and I taught all of you how to write the 5-paragraph essay because in the 9th grade, that's what is expected of you. But now that you're in the 10th grade, we're going to focus on how to develop your ideas beyond that. And so our lesson today is going to focus on how do you take the information that you actually have and then organize it in such a way that your paper flows really well, is well organized, and shows all of those developed ideas. Okay, so there's a few things we need to look at before we actually get into the outlining of the paper. So what you want to have open on your desktop is your Google Classroom account. This one is for the 9-10 class, but all of them should look the same. This one here should have your thesis statement and outline assignment attached to it. Okay. There is a video that I also uploaded to Schoology on how to create a Google Doc that attaches to the assignment. Please watch that first and create a blank document before you finish up this video and actually attempt to do this. Okay, so watch the other video first. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to open up the document that is linked to this assignment. It should have your name in the title, okay, and you should have that somewhere on your desktop. Okay, what's good too about this assignment here is I've given you a handout, and if you click right here, you can get access to the handout on how to outline. Okay, it goes over the major topics that you have, the subtopics, the supporting details. These are the things that we're going to be working with. So this handout is very useful to you. Okay, I actually copied and pasted this information into the document we'll be using for a practice document. So I'm going to just close this out, but this is a really good resource to use when you need to reference exactly what goes into the outline. Okay, so I'm going to close that out. All right, so you have the assignment. The assignment is due right now on the 22nd, Thursday at midnight. So hopefully you are watching this video today, Wednesday, and then you can apply this information on Thursday. If not, if it's Thursday and you're watching the video, that's okay too. All right, so the next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to go to Schoology for a second. Okay, what you want to do is you need to find the link to the practice outline document. Okay, so you're going to go in your writing folder. Okay, you're going to find your House on Mango Street, the help paper folder. You're going to open that. Okay, and then there should be a link to a practice outline right there. Now, initially, this was blank, and we created this as a class on Tuesday while you were away on your field trip. You can reference this later after you finish watching this video to help you figure out what it is that you need to do. It's still in the folder. It's still going to stay there. It will not match exactly what it is that I'm going to show you in this video because every class came up with a unique way of creating this paper. And so the way that I show you right now is not necessarily going to be identical. Okay. So you can look at that later. You don't need that right now. I created another Google document that we're going to use to figure out how to do this outline. Okay. So when you are starting to write your paper and you're starting to try to figure out how to formulate your outline, what you're going to do is put your thesis statement, hopefully again that is as polished as it can be, but you're going to put your thesis statement at the top of the page, and then you're going to try to figure out how to break it down into parts, okay? The way you decide to break it down into parts is with the parts that I have here in the outline. So you have your major topics, your subtopics, your supporting details, okay? This is the bare minimum that you have to have in your outline. But because this isn't a formula that's set where you have to have 5 paragraphs or 7 paragraphs, you have as many paragraphs as you need to actually have to write your paper, you need to make this model fit your purpose, okay? So your paper may have 3 major topics, it might have 2 major topics, it could have subtopic A and subtopic B in one section, but maybe you have subtopic A, subtopic B, and then subtopic C in the next section, okay? They don't have to be even. You can have 2 supporting details in subtopic A, and you could have 4 supporting details in subtopic B. It all depends on what kind of information you have to work with. So that's what you want to look for, okay? So we're going to be using my practice thesis statement that we talked about when we were generating our thesis statements as our example, okay? Usually I do this as an interactive lesson. The classroom is empty right now, so I'm going to be answering my own questions, but I am going to pause for a second to give you a chance to think about potentially what you would put in there as you go along, okay? So the thesis statement says, In the House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros and The Help by Catherine Stockett, each author shows the power of language and storytelling as a vehicle for empowerment and change, okay? So when you're sitting down to do this, you want to think to yourself, okay, how can I take that and break it into 2 major parts to have my major topics, okay? Or 3 or whatever it is that you have, but you need to figure out how to break it down, okay? So you think about it for a while, and there's basically 3 ways that you can do this, okay? Think to yourself how you would do it, and then I'm going to type those out here in just a second. Okay, so the first way that you can do this is you can organize this outline by having your major topics as books. Okay, this will allow you to talk about the 2 different books in a way that is well organized, because you're going to talk about one book and then you're going to talk about another book. Okay, another way you could organize this, and hopefully you thought of it, was by characters. Okay. So you can go through and talk about one character in a major section, another character in another section, and then maybe a third character in the third section. Okay, and then another way that you can do this is by organizing it by main ideas. Okay, so these are the 3 ways for this particular paper, and this isn't going to always be the case for every single paper that you ever write, but for this particular paper, these are basically the 3 main ways that you can organize this paper. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to model these for you so that you can kind of see how to put this together. There is not one right answer on how to put together an outline. There are many, many different right answers. So you want to pick the one that makes the most logical sense for you as an individual. Okay, your outline might not match somebody else's outline in the room, and that's perfectly okay, because these are your ideas and you're trying to figure out how to convey them in an organized fashion. Okay, so we're going to first use the method to organize by books. Okay, and so we're going to be looking at this and using this format. Now, what I suggest that you do is you go through and you write all of your major topics first, then all of your subtopics, then all of your supporting details. Okay, so our major topics, of course, are the titles of the books. Okay, so we have The Help, and then we have The House on Mango Street. Okay, and with this outline, it's perfectly okay to abbreviate things as you go through them. You don't need to have complete sentences at this point. You just need to have enough information so you can remember what it is that you're talking about, okay? So single words are fine, short phrases are fine. If you need to write more, though, just to help you remember, that's okay too, okay? All right, so our major topics are set. We only have 2 books, so we only have 2 major topics. So now the next part that we need to look at here is the subtopic, okay? So we need to go through and put subtopics in for each of our major topics. So under the help, okay, we need to figure out the best way to divide it. So again, you want to sit here and you want to think to yourself, okay, I'm dealing with this book. How do I divide this out into at least 2 parts? And it could be more parts depending on what it is that you're working with. Okay, so go ahead and think to yourself, how would I divide this out? Okay, so hopefully it occurred to you that maybe the divisions would be related to this short list that we have up here, okay? What I'm going to do for my subtopics for this example, I'm going to use characters, okay? So I'm going to list the characters that I want to help prove my point. Now remember, my thesis deals with the power of language and storytelling as a vehicle for empowerment and change. So every character I use has to be demonstrating something that then proves something about the power of language and storytelling. Okay, so obviously the first character that comes to mind is Skeeter, because she's the one who pushes the book forward, okay, to have it written. So she would be a great person to put in there. And then, of course, we have Aibileen too. And Aibileen is crucial in the writing of the book because she gets the maids to come forward, and then she does her own writing as well. So both of them are very influential with storytelling and language, okay? So then I'm going to go down to House on Mango Street, okay? And I am going to, there we go. Okay, and that I'm going to list off the characters who are also focused on the power of language and storytelling, okay? So Esperanza is obviously our first choice. Okay, and now if you have a part 1, you have to have a part 2. If you have an A, you have to have a B. So I have to come up with something for B here. Okay, now as I'm thinking about this, it's a little tricky because there's not necessarily a specific character that comes to mind that deals with the power of language besides Esperanza in that book. Okay, so now we're kind of at an impasse. Now, the other people in the book that deal with storytelling or writing a little bit, we have Minerva, who writes poems, okay, but she's stuck in an abusive situation, so empowerment doesn't totally fit with her. And then we have Aunt Lupe, who encourages Esperanza to continue writing. And so she's not necessarily a writer herself, but she does encourage her there. So I'm going to write down just neighbors for right now for the sake of this exercise. But I'm a little bit worried about being able to prove those two because I don't think that they're strong pieces of evidence. Okay, and I'll show you what to do with that if you find yourself in that situation in just a second. Okay, if I had additional people that I wanted to include here, I could have a letter C. I don't want to put anybody else for right now, so we're going to stick with A and B. Okay, so now that we have our subtopics in, we're going to go and we're going to put in our supporting details. Now, supporting details are specific pieces of evidence that you find in the book, okay? And they need to be so specific that if you opened up the book, you could put your finger on the sentence that indicates that piece of evidence. It should be something that's actually occurring, okay? So, for example, and we'll actually put this under Aibileen because this is a good example for her. For example, Aibileen uses storytelling when she talks to May Mobley about Martin Luther King, and she tells the civil rights stories in an allegorical form. That's a great example of somebody who uses language and storytelling to try to improve the situation that's happening with the racist society in Jackson. Okay, so I'm going to put down May Mobley. Okay, and that would be a great example. It's very specific. Now, when you're putting in your supporting details, you don't want to put down direct quotes. Direct quotes do not belong in the outline. Okay, direct quotes are going to come into play. You obviously need to have strong textual evidence to prove your paper, but we're going to worry about that a few steps from now. Okay, so don't even think about that just yet. All right, so we're going to go back up to Skeeter, and we need to think of an example that deals with the power of language and storytelling as a vehicle for empowerment and change. Okay, go ahead and think for a second. I'll let you see what you can come up with, and then I'll tell you what I have in mind. Okay, so in my mind, the most important thing Skeeter does is she writes the help. In the book, they call it help. So, oops, they call it, rather than The Help, which is the title of the novel, within the book, they call it The Help, or Help. Okay, anyway, so that would be a really strong example because she is able to expose the racist society that's going on, especially in connection with the treatment of the maids, okay? Then another thing that Skeeter does that deals with language and storytelling as a vehicle for empowerment or change is a little bit more personal to her. It's not necessarily helping society overall directly, although I think indirectly you could argue that it is, but she's able to better her own life, okay? She's able to better her own life by breaking down the gender roles, by challenging the status quo, and by doing that, she's able to make herself happy. Okay, so we're going to write down that she has a column, oops, and then she has a job in New York. Okay, and then you can talk about how that leads to her own personal empowerment. Okay, so then the next thing we want to do is add another example for Abilene. So we have the Mae Mobley stories. Okay, she also does help write the help book, so we can put that down as well. But when we're talking about it, and we'll talk about this more later when we get to the details portion of the writing process, which is a few steps away, okay? But you want to make sure that when you talk about them, you're thinking about them in a different way. So you wouldn't just want to repeat the same thing you said in the Skeeter section. You would want to come up with something unique, okay? So she also writes the book, and I think that those two things can be different because both Skeeter and Abilene come from different perspectives. So there's definitely different things to say. Okay, and then she also has her prayer diary. So you could talk about that and show how that would help show empowerment. Okay, all right, so then we would just continue on with that. I'm going to stop for the sake of time because there's a few more ways I want to show you before we end. Okay, you would do the same thing for Esperanza. You think of ways that she would be empowered as well. Okay, now we talked about how the neighbors section might give us a little bit of trouble. So if you're in that situation that as you're going through your organization and something is not quite working right, what you need to do is you need to stop and you need to figure out, okay, is there a different way I can organize this, okay? And I actually think that for this particular thesis, the better way to do this would be to organize by books still for the main topics, okay? So I'm going to hit return there. We'll say The Help, and then we'll say House on Mango Street, okay? But instead of organizing, slide that up a little bit, instead of organizing by characters, I think that from our list of 3, books, characters, and main ideas, I think that the better choice would be to instead organize by main ideas, okay? So looking back at our thesis statement says each author shows the power of language and storytelling as a vehicle for empowerment and change. Okay, what that lends itself to nicely is the 2 parts of the main ideas. Okay, subtopic A could be the power of language and storytelling. Subtopic B then could be empowerment and change. Okay, so we'll come down here and we'll talk about language and storytelling, and then empowerment and change. Okay, so that's what we have under the help for our subtopic. So think to yourself then, okay, if we have that for our subtopics under the help, what would our subtopics be under House on Mango Street? Okay, if you said exactly the same thing as what we have under the help, that you would be absolutely right. So we're just going to copy and paste that. We'll tab over. Okay, and we have our subtopics in place. Okay, so again, what we need to do is we need to go through and we need to try to think of very specific examples to help us fill out the supporting details. Okay, so in this case, we're not focusing on just one character, we're focusing on all the characters that deal with language and storytelling. So we can take some of the examples that we had from above. Okay, so we have the Mae Mobley stories example. Okay, writing the help. Okay, what else did we say up there? Skeeter's column. Okay, And then down here, empowerment and change, what we can talk about is looking at the May Mobley stories. What that does is it addresses future generations. So it helps them see the flaws in racist thinking, okay? We could talk about how the help book exposes racism. Okay, and so that's the purpose of writing it, is so that the society knows that these maids are being treated poorly. Okay, and then individually, Skeeter is able to find independence because she has her column and her job in New York. Okay, she's able to break those gender roles. Oops. Okay. So basically that's how you would organize it. So this one is first by books for major topics, then the subtopics are main ideas, and then you have your specific details, okay? And then we would, of course, continue on with House on Mango Street to find specific examples there. Okay, we're going to stop because I think you get the idea, and we're going to try a different way, okay? And remember, these are all different outlines for the same thesis statement. You can use any of these. Whatever fits your purpose is what you want to do, okay? So our other way that we said we could organize, we already did books, okay? And then what we want to do next is we're going to try by characters, okay? So if we do that, okay. So if we do by characters, we need to list off all of the characters that fit our purpose, okay? We're, again, thinking about the major topics, okay? So again, the power of language and writing. So we have Skeeter. We have Abilene, okay, and we have Esperanza. Okay, so if we do it this way, we need to think, okay, how do we divide Skeeter out into subtopics, okay? Now, looking back at our list, okay, the first one is by books. Well, we can't use that one because what are we going to divide it out to? House on Mango Street and The Help, that doesn't make sense. So we can't use that one, so we'll ignore that, okay? And right now, our major topic is characters, so all that leaves is main ideas. Okay, so we're going to come back here and we're going to think of main ideas. Now, try to think to yourself, okay, what subtopics should we have? What main ideas should we have? Okay, so think for a second. Okay, if you thought to yourself that you needed to have the same subtopics that we used in the last example for your main ideas, you would be exactly right, okay? So we're going to go ahead and just pop those in there. Now, if we have that as our subtopic for Skeeter, we're going to have that for our subtopic for Abilene. Okay, and we're going to do it for Esperanza as well. Okay, so you can see the major topics and the subtopics. So again, we're going to go back up and we're going to put in our supporting details. Again, they need to be specific events that occur in the book. Okay, so language and storytelling for Skeeter. Okay, she has the help book. Okay, she also has her column, and which then leads to her job in New York. Okay, and then that for her also, she helps expose racism for empowerment and change. Okay, and then as an individual, she becomes empowered. Okay, and then you continue on. So with Abilene, language and storytelling, you could talk about May Mobley again. You could talk about the help book. You could talk about her prayer diary. You could talk about whatever it is that you have. Now, you want to continue to add examples as you have them. So again, if you have 3 examples for your supporting details, go ahead and put them in there, okay? You should have as many as you're able to think of that you think are strong. If you find yourself writing a paper that's way too long when you get to that point of actually writing it, all you have to do then is go and eliminate your weakest examples to shorten the paper up a little bit, okay? So try to put down whatever it is that you have in mind, and so we continue on with that, okay? So coming back up to our list, and we're almost done here. This is the last one we're going to look at. But coming back up to our list, we've done books, we've done characters, and now main ideas, okay? Now for main ideas, I'm going to suggest that you do not use this one, but I'm going to show it to you to explain to you why, okay? So if we were going to organize our major topics by main ideas, okay, what we would do is we would have the same ideas that we had up here, okay? So the first thing that we're going to have is language and storytelling, okay? And then major idea 2 would be empowerment and change. Oops. Okay, and those are our major topics. All right, now what we would do then for the subtopics, coming back up to the list here, okay, it would probably make most sense to organize by books, possibly characters, okay? But I'm going to show you by books just to show you exactly why this isn't going to work. All right, so if we do it by books, we're going to have The Help, and then we're going to have House on Mango Street, okay? And then the same thing down here. Okay, now what's going to end up happening, and you would have, of course, your supporting details. I'm not going to actually list those out for what we're doing right now, but you can see where they would go. Okay, and then et cetera, et cetera. The reason that this isn't going to work is because if you're talking about the first major idea, language and storytelling, with The Help and then the House on Mango Street, okay, you're first talking about The Help, then you're talking about House on Mango Street, then you talk about The Help again, and then you talk about House on Mango Street. So you're jumping, you're ping-ponging back and forth between the two books, okay? Think of that from the perspective of a reader. Is it easy to read something where you're jumping from one idea and then back to another and then back to the first idea and then back and forth and back and forth? Hopefully you're answering no, okay? But that's not probably the best organization. You want to instead group your like ideas, and so you probably want to have your full discussion about each book all grouped together, okay? Now this is, of course, a technique for organization that you definitely can use in the future. The reason that this doesn't work for this paper is because it's a comparison paper. You're comparing one book to another, and so you have two things you're jumping back and forth between, okay? But later when we write our other papers, you may want to organize by major ideas because the ideas will be interrelated and you'll move from one idea to the next and you'll be able to show a nice relationship, okay? So this does exist. Don't use it for this paper, but it is a good organizational method possibly in the future, okay? So, excuse me, so basically that's it. So what you need to do, especially those of you that were absent, you need to make sure first that you watch the other video and you have created a Google Doc attached to the assignment within Google Classroom, and the video will show you how to do that, okay? It should have your name in the title automatically. Google Classroom will stick that in there. That's how you know you did it right, okay? So you should make sure you have that. Then polish up your thesis statement, make it the best that you can. Copy and paste your thesis statement into your new document for your Google Doc where you're working, okay? And then you should start making your outline, okay? I am going to give you all day Thursday to work in class. You can talk to your writing buddy so that you can help each other figure out what you want to put in there, okay? And then when you're finished, you're going to submit your assignment to me. There's going to be a button actually right here on the screen of your document. You should see it there when you open it. This isn't a Google Classroom doc. This is just a Google Doc, but it should say turn in. You're going to hit that button. It's going to send it to me. I'm going to look it over, give you some comments, and then I'm going to send it back to you. And then once your outline is approved, then we're going to proceed to the next step, okay? So if you were absent, just watch this video tonight. If you want to try to start working on it, go for it. If not, you can ask questions tomorrow during class, and I'll be happy to sit with you and talk to you about whatever you need to know, okay? Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. Hopefully it helped you figure out what you need to do. And again, if you have questions, please, please, please come and see me. I'll be happy to help you figure out whatever it is you need to know, okay? All right, have a great night.